So there are different type of variables available, and among those are like primitive variables, reference variables, local variables, instance variables, static variables, and final variables. So we discussed almost all. Final variable also we discussed in the beginning, but I'll explain it again. So primitive variables. So primitive variables are the variables that holds of primitive data type, right? Int, float, double, all these are primitive variables. Reference variables are the variables that holds of data type of class, any class, a student class, a string class, an employee class, bank account class, anything. If it is holding a class, class data type, if the variable is of type class data type, then it becomes a reference variable. Reference variable holds the address of the object that we are creating. Initially default value is null. So the basic difference between primitive variables and reference variables is primitive variables default values are goes with the data type of that primitive variable, and reference variables default value is null. And as and when you assign an object, any object, by creating using the new keyword, and if you assign that object to this reference variable, then the reference variable is going to hold the block address, right? So using that, you started accessing the data within that class. Let's say a student is having a name and account and course and ID. Then you created a student object, and now you try to keep the student object into student reference variable. And once you created the student object and you assign this student object to the student reference variable, and when you want to modify the data in the student, then you keep on modifying using accessing through the reference variable, right? Nice. So the default size is 8 bytes, right? Because it just need to hold the address. It's not literally holding the object, it's just holding the address of the object. Okay, local variables. Local variables are the variables that defined inside the method. The scope of the variables, local variables, dies within the method. So you can access within that method. If you define a variable a particular method, you can access within the method. But if you try to access outside that method, then it's not going to be accessible. The local variable scope is within the method. And next thing is local variables you must initialize. If you want to use any defined local variable, you must initialize, otherwise it will give you an error. When you try to use it, it will give you an error saying that you must initialize. Local variables must be initialized, right? And then you cannot apply final keyword to the local variables. If you try to apply the final keyword to the local variables, it gives an error. You cannot apply final variable to the local variables. You cannot apply static to the local variables. Okay, nice. Then what is instance variables? Instance variables are the variables that has been defined at the class level outside the method inside the class, right? Then those variables are called instance variable. One exception is if you without defining a static keyword. As and when you define a static keyword, it doesn't become an instance variable, it becomes a static variable, right? Okay, so here static variable, can we apply to a method? Yes, we can apply to a method. Can we apply to a class? Yes, we can apply to a class with an exception. The class should be an inner class. You cannot apply to a outer class. Okay, I'll explain that keyword in the class later. Keep it in mind. And the next one, static variable can be when you define a variable static, and if you define at the class level, then it becomes a class, static variable that loads at the class, that loads along with the class. Okay, that loads along with the class. So what happens, right, when you try to compile a program? What are the steps involved when you try to in memory? What will happen? First thing, right, when you try, you you wrote a 100 lines of code and you compiled it. It compiled very well, and the bytecode has been generated in terms of .class file. Then when you try to run the program, what happens, right? First thing what happens is a JVM will be loaded into the RAM, into your memory. JVM will be loaded into your memory. So you have this 8 GB RAM, 8 GB memory. In that, JVM first loads into and occupies, let's say for example, it occupies 2 GB. And this is for remaining your applications. You are running with your application something else, like you playing movie, you playing music, you are watching videos, all the blah 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 stuff. It's happened, it loads in the remaining part. So we take this part. Okay, this is the JVM loads. Okay, let's take another diagram in that without only JVM. Okay, now let's say this is the 2 GB JVM that loaded into memory. So first thing what happens, a class will be loaded, a text file. A class is a text file, right? Java class file, bytecode will be loaded. And then from them onwards, whatever it looks for the main method. And then from then onwards, it start creating whatever actions you did inside the class. If you created an object, you will create an object, and it will create a reference variable for that. If you create another object, it will create another object. It will give a reference variable for that, right? So these are all things happen. So what are the steps here? First, class will be loaded, right? And then object will be created. So in between step 1 and step 2, it's like technically 3. So what happens is, when you define a static variable, what happens is when it is loading the class, it looks for, okay, is there any static variables inside that class? If the static variable is there, it will load automatically. Without creating an object, it will load that static variable. Let's say you defined a static int a. So when class is loading in that in whatever the class that you try to execute, then static variable also loaded with whatever the value that you gave. Okay, then if you try to create an object, okay, it create an object. Okay, this guy is having reference, so it creates a reference between these two, object and the static variable. Same thing happens with this guy also. So what does it mean? Static is only one what is that keyword, like come on, give me a second, let's load and use the right way. Yeah, only one copy of memory will be allocated for static variables for all the objects that you are going to create for that class. If you have a student class, if you create a 10 students, if you enroll 10 students, then all the 10 students, if there is a variable called static variable, then that same static variable will be assigned. Okay, next, and same memory location will be occupied. So static variables can be accessed through class name, and static variables can also be accessed with the object. And then when you apply for static to a method, there is certain rules, like you can access static where non-static method inside a static method. You cannot access non-static method inside a static method. If you want to access non-static method or non-static variable, non-static members inside a static method, you need to do explicitly create an object and then try to access. You cannot access them, non-static members, directly into static method. Okay, if you want to access, you need to create an object and then try to access it. Okay, static methods also can be accessed directly with the class name without creating an object. Okay, so final is a variable. Final is a variable which is nothing but a simple constant. As and when you define a variable, what happens is, as and when you define a variable and assign a final keyword, then that value is not going to be changed. So final variables must be initialized whatever the value that you want, and once you assign some value, it never gonna change. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Okay, so that is static final variable. Yeah, variable declared with final modifier are called final variable. Final variables are constants. Final variable allowed for instance variables, static variables, local variables. Oh, so local variable also, method level also you can assign. Having said that, let's open our concepts. Here we have something like a very nice, very kind of defined. Yeah, instance variable, method variables, method, classes. So can we apply final to a instance variable? Yes, this is the highlighted part, right? This is the part. And can we apply final to the method? Yes. Can we apply final to the method variable? Yes. Can we apply final to the class? Yes, you can apply. Okay. Same thing. Static. Can we apply static to the instance variable? Yes. Can we apply static to a method? Yes. Can we apply static to a method level variables? No. Can we apply static to a classes? No, but you can apply for inner classes. Okay, these two keywords. You agree with me? Okay. So next part is access modifiers, access specifiers. Okay, another interesting concept is access specifiers. What are access specifiers? What is the use of access specifiers or access modifiers or visibility modifiers? Public, protected, private, default. These four: public, protected, private, default. These are the four keywords. So remember, like, what we may be doing couple of things parallel, but we are going in the right direction. So we learned about all this piece, right? Nice. And then we learned about all these controllers, right? Nice. And then we talked about static. In this section we talked about static. So static is done. And then we talked about where is the final. Yeah, we finished about final in this section. In this section we finished about final. Okay, so here we are going to talk about now another keywords like public, protected, private, default, right? What are those? What are we going to do with them, right? They basically called as access specifiers, access modifiers, or visibility modifiers. We can call it whatever the way we want. But so there are four types: private, default, protected, public. Private, default, protected, public. Okay, so in that section we may be unknowingly using already say public, right? So what does it mean? Like, it is accessible across, you know, wherever you write it, it can be accessible across. Okay, there is one more keyword. Let's do it together. Package. Yeah, so packages. So when we use, like, when you use any of these access specifiers, what happens the access between the classes? Oh damn, if I want to discuss that, I need to explain a small concept. That is nothing but inheritance. Let's keep these four keywords aside. We will come back to them by end of the day. First we'll discuss about inheritance concept. Sorry for the little confusion here. So inheritance. If you remember, what are the four object-oriented concepts that we have? One is abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. We kind of achieved encapsulation and abstraction here. Encapsulation is nothing but keeping private variables and public methods, which means like keeping the variable, keeping the attributes slash properties and operations together. And abstraction is nothing but, see, let's say here I do blah 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 stuff. Okay, I will name equal to okay, this yeah, name equal to name plus additional logic added, something like that. You added to the name. Okay, and then you return the name, right? So whoever calls this method, they need not to worry about what is the logic inside. They don't need to get an access to this logic. They just need to use this method to pass this name. Whatever the definition that it is carrying, this method is doing, it will do automatically. Whoever caller need not to worry about it. Okay, so what you are going to do, you just giving an access to set name. You are not giving an access to how you are modifying the other parts. So abstracting, you are abstracting this logic from the caller. You are abstracting this logic from the caller. So who is the caller here? Student recorder. So student recorder, let's say let student std equal to new student. This is how you need to create object, right? So std dot set name. All we are giving an access is set name. You are not giving an access to modify the concept, the logic inside this set name method, right? You are not giving an access to modify the inside logic. All you are giving an access to modify, pass the variables that required for this method to call. So student is abstracting this logic to student recorder, right? That is called abstraction. Okay, it's like an abstraction, like you say, right? It says way of doing through encapsulation in technology, in Java technology, or this computer science world. What we can do, abstraction is a way of doing it. Let's say somebody shows you, you may be seeing if you log in into, yeah, that's a better way. I'll show you. Oh, come on, man. See, let's say I'll do something here. Okay, I'll say like this. Okay, I'll show you like this, right? So I opened the Apple stock. Okay, you saw this graph, right? You are seeing, let's say I clicked on the last 1 month, what happened for the stock. It's showing a graphical representation here, right? It just giving you what you needed, how they implemented behind the logic, how they implemented this graph, how they captured the data, how this curve moves, what are these values, how they defined these values, what is the logic they used to, and what are the UI technology they used to display this. You don't need to worry about it. So Google Finance is abstracting the logic of displaying this graph. All it is doing is it's just displaying the graph. The logic behind the graph, it's not displaying it to you, right? That is called an abstraction. Okay. Next one is inheritance. So inheritance, like I mentioned, what is inheritance? Inheritance is a concept where you used for code reusability. And second thing is, inheritance is nothing but making use of the parent class functionality in your child class, making use of the parent's class functionality in the child class. Agreed? Any other definition is there? Let me check quickly. If I miss something, we can refresh quickly that word and then we can start. Yeah, that's what. Writing a new class by using a functionality of an existing class is called as an inheritance. Existing class is known as superclass or base class or parent class. New class is called as subclass or derived class or child class. So what is the advantage of primary and foremost advantage of the inheritance? Reusability, code reusability. Okay, so what are the different types of inheritances that has been available? What are the different types of inheritances available, and what are the ones that are supported by Java? There are two things, right? Concept and then implementation in Java, and availability of to what level this inheritance concept has been adopted by Java, right? So let's talk about quickly what are the inheritance concepts that are being available, right? 4 different concepts are there. I hope we have, yeah, 4 different concepts are there. One is simple inheritance, and the second one is multi-level inheritance. Third one is hierarchical inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance. Yes, this guy. And the last one is multiple inheritance, and last one is hybrid inheritance. There are 5: simple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, hybrid inheritance. Okay, so let's talk about with the pictorial so you can easily understand, right? Simple inheritance. What is simple inheritance? Let's take A as a parent, and if you are accessing A functionality into B, then it is called simply simple inheritance, just accessing A functionality into B. This is called simple inheritance. Multi-level inheritance. What is multi-level inheritance? Multi-level inheritance is levels, right? Multi-level. This is one level. You can have multiple levels, right? So your B is accessing A functionality, and C is accessing B functionality. Let's say another one, D is also accessing C functionality, kind of thing. So this is called multi-level. This is one level, this is another level, right? Multi-level inheritance, this is, okay, which means, like, you know, a simple thing, like a simple concept, parent and child, here grandparent to parent, parent to child, right? Okay, another scenario is like multiple inheritance. Another concept is multiple inheritance, which means A and B, two classes, they don't have any relation. A and B doesn't have any relation, okay, but C is getting inherited from A, getting inherited from B, okay. This is concepts. What are the different types of inheritances concepts are available in object oriented? We are not talking about Java. We will talk among these which ones we are using, which ones doesn't support, okay. And another one is, fourth one is hierarchical inheritance. Hierarchical inheritance is, so this is multi-level, and this one is multiple. Don't get confused between multiple and multi-level, okay. And then hybrid is something like you have A class, and B and C are trying to get, B and try to get the features of A. B and C are trying to, let's say another one also, nothing, as many as you want. So only one parent and multiple childs trying to access that. That is hierarchical, hierarchical inheritance, okay. And the last one is hybrid inheritance. Hybrid inheritance is two people accessing two classes accessing A, and one guy again try to access B and C. This is hybrid. Okay, so how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, among these 5 different ways of doing, like inheritance is concepts, but you need to follow some rules, right? Like, in family, like if you have two brothers, like they need to share the parents legacy and parents property in an equal manner, or whatever the format, whatever the definition that has been there, right? Otherwise there is a lot of conflicts you can encounter. Or else if you have a single child, like you can simply get like all the features. Or else if your grandfather is still holding certain property which he doesn't give to the parent, your parent, and you still want to get that, that is something like another way of. So there are different things that has been involved, right? So among those, these are the 5 different inheritance concepts that object oriented has been defined. And in this, Java has been able to adopt simple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance. It couldn't able to achieve multiple, it couldn't able to achieve hybrid. So Java follows simple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance. It doesn't follow multiple or hybrid. Why? Because we will see some examples and we can understand. We don't need to, but for now remember, simple inheritance is allowed, multi-level inheritance is allowed, and hierarchical is allowed. Okay, agreed? Can I wipe off? Okay, so how do we achieve? I mean, okay, we said like these concepts can be achievable, but how do we achieve? Using the keywords. There are different keywords, kind of keywords. Where is this mouse? Yeah, there are different kind of keywords are there, right? So using keyword called extends, we can achieve. Okay, so how do we achieve? Let's see that. Let's write a program. Okay, so now see, I'm going to src new first package. Okay, com bell batch 6 day 6. Okay, so inheritance, can we name? Okay, it's okay. Class simple inheritance. I'll do all the classes in a single class in the beginning, because so that it gives you like I don't need to move between the classes and you don't need to get confused. So this is the logic that we try to execute. This is where we are going to write all the classes. Okay, different classes if you want to write and try to see what will happen. This is where we're going to write. Okay, give me a second. Sorry, one second. Okay, so what are we doing is like class parent. I'm going to call it as a parent class parent. Okay, and I'll write some logic like int cache equal to blah blah blah. Okay, and string land. I'll say 50 acres, something like this. Okay, and then void. You may be thinking, if I have 50 acres, why the heck I need to come down here, right? Yeah, but I'm still here, right? If you get in Parasema, you need to be. Yeah, so I wrote a what you call a simple method, parent method. So I'll call it as par method. So, and what I will do is sys parent property plus cache plus land. Let's give some gap between those two by giving a semicolon. Okay, so this is the parent class. Let's try to write a child class, child. As child, and you may have like a void child method, sys priority. I have nothing for now. Okay, so now there's a child class and parent class, but there is no relation, right? Somehow you need to establish a relation between those two, right? What is the way you can do? Inheritance concept. If you want to get all these features that has been available with the parent into your child class, then you need to establish a relation between the parent and child, right? How do we do that in Java? Using inheritance concept. How do we do that in Java? Using the inheritance concept, using the keyword called extends. What we will say, whoever want to use the functionality on that class, next class, extends parent. Right? So now I established a relation between the child and parent. This is called simple inheritance. So okay, so what is the use? I get it. What is the use? I got it. So first thing is, you don't need to write this logic, all this logic inside. You don't need to write all this logic inside here like this, because you already got an establishment, a relation between the child and parent, so you can access all those properties. You remember, anything within that class will be accessible within that class, right? If you write something here, if this is not here, if you write something here in the parent, the scope of that content will be limited to that class. But how somebody can able to access that? Using the inheritance concept. So how do we achieve? Using extends keyword parent. Now you don't need to write this all this logic here, but you still able to access. How do we do that? I'll show you. So let's say this is normal, without inheritance, normal parent p equal to new parent. Okay, you created an object, parent object. So p dot par method. This is creating a parent object and accessing the par method. That is normal, right? Typical. But second one is, this is also another normal. Create a child object. Child c equal to new child. Isn't it? Now accessing c dot child method. This is also typically normal, right? So if you run this program, v1 without this keyword for now, So there is no relation. You created as many, parent and child, blah blah blah. Now I am running this program. So parent property 10,000, 50 acres, and kid is I have nothing for now. Okay, so if once you establish the relation with extends keyword and inheritance, let's try to c dot parent. See, now you are able to access parent method as well. So you are able to access the method that is there in the parent class using the child object C. That is what inheritance. Okay, try to understand. There is no rocket science, just focus. Okay, you are trying to access a parent method using the child reference variable. That's the beauty of inheritance. Now you can see, okay, so these two lines has been executed under these two guys. So if I comment out this piece, even though if I comment out this piece, you still get parent access and you still see the results. Parent property by calling child. So that is how you establish the relation. So this is the simple inheritance. What is multi-level inheritance, right? Simple, right? But I will still show you. That's okay. Multi-level inheritance. Okay, what we're gonna do is like same thing, class base class, you can call it as class else class grandparent, class parent, and last one class, sorry, I'm using wrong way, keyword. All the keywords are small letters, right? You should not confuse. Child, child. Okay. Now, it is scope. Parent 1, child 1, grandparent 1. Why I got that error, I explain it later. Now parent extends, let's say grandparent, and child and extends parent 1. Okay, so now grandparent doesn't have anything, parent doesn't have anything. So what I'm going to do, public void G method this is grandparent, copy paste here. Okay, child doesn't have anything, let's say. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, simple, I don't need to show you the not regular ways. So child C1 equal to new child, right? And then now see C1 dot, I can see grandparent method, and C1 dot, I use the same name, sorry, let me use this different name. We'll come to the same name concept as well for now. And then so if you try to run this program, this is the grandparent. Okay, so this is grandparent, this is parent, just by using the child reference variable, by assigning the child object So by using the child reference object, you can access the grandparent data, parent data as well. This is the multi-level inheritance. So this guy access parents, parent access grandparents, so child can access the grandparent. Okay, that is multi-level inheritance. And then multiple is not possible. Why it is, I can explain you. Hierarchical is um, 1 second, I'll just switch on the light. So this sheet will be the same. What I'm going to do here, class hierarchical inheritance is single parent, two kids kind of thing scenario, right? So class parent 1, so maybe this guy is having something else, parent 2, and public void p method associated parent, and then class child 1, child 2, let's say, and class child 3. Okay, so you can now, if this hierarchical inheritance, what you can do, extends parent 2, extends parent 2. Okay, so now, so single class accessible by reusing by two child classes. Okay, and just using the names parent and child, you can name it whatever you want, right? Yeah, I believe you guys got that sense by now. So child 2 C2 equal to new child 2, child 3 C3 equal to new child 3. Okay, so now C2 dot P method, C1 C3 dot P method you can access. This is what called hierarchical inheritance. And inside, so you can access the parent method. So this is different ways of accessing some other class, logic into your own class. Make sense? Are you guys with me? Okay, nice. So if you observe, right, and with the assumption I was just focusing on methods, you can even access the variables. These are the two variables available in the parent, and if I do here, if I want to access here, right, if come here c dot cache, see, you are able to see cache, right, int cache 1. So you can able to access the variable same way, where the same way that you are able to access the method, you can able to access the variables. Okay, you agree with me? Okay, so this is all about inheritance concept, and like I said, among those multiple and hybrid is not allowed. Multiple is not allowed because like multiple is something like this, keeping parent here and then grandparent. If you try to do this, this is multiple, but this is not allowed because you can access only one class. If you want multiple extensions, you can go for that multi-level inheritance. Okay, but you can achieve this whatever the grandparent multi-level inheritance, whatever the multi-level inheritance that is not allowed directly in Java, you can achieve that in different way using the concept of interface. Using the concept of interface, this you cannot access directly on classes, but you can achieve this by using the concept of interface. By using the concept of interface we can achieve it, but we'll go to the interface later. We are little behind before discussing that. Okay, so this is not allowed directly on a class. Okay, nice. After this, what we want to go back is, let's go back to our, yeah, access specifiers. Before we go through all this stuff, what we can do is we can try to discuss about the packages. Okay, so packages we discussed actually, but let's discuss a little more. I explained only the basic thing, packages will help you to segregate. Yeah, I heard you. That is the concept of polymorphism. If you remember, there are four concepts, object oriented, right? Abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So when we get into the polymorphism, we will discuss about that. How the parent method is going to be held by child, and what happens then, how to establish the relation between those two, and what is how a compile time polymorphism is called as overloading, and runtime polymorphism as overriding. So those concepts, when we talk about runtime polymorphism, we will get into it. But you remind me if I forgot there. I'm sure I'm not going to, but yeah. So let's go to the packages concept. So packages is nothing but, I'm not repeating this inheritance concept. I am assuming you guys catched up whatever we discussed. But if not, just go back and revision the discussion once I upload it. If you still have doubts, like the same way, either you can drop an email, or if I find some time, I'll stop by your locations. Okay. And I'll by the end of the class, I'll give you the new approach. We'll do that as well. Packages. So packages and access modifiers. So let's discuss these two together. That gives us more comfortable. So basically, access modifiers, access specifiers, visibility modifiers are like private, default, protected, public. Okay. So what it gives you, like what happens like when you use the keyword public? What happens when you use the keyword like private? What happens when you use the public? What how it changes, right? So these access modifiers, public, protected, default, private, are scope. Okay, they specifies the scope of that variable, specifies the scope of that method, specifies the scope of that parent, that class. Okay, so when you apply public, the scope of this variable will have some definition. When you apply private here, it has some scope. the scope we'll discuss, like what is the level of scope, but I'm just saying when whatever the keyword that the access specifier you mentioned here, protected, when you apply protected, it has some value. Okay, so, and if you don't apply anything, it means default, that is the default scope, default access specifier without mentioning anything is nothing but now it is a default. Okay, so these are the these specifiers defines the scope. Okay, okay, so what happens when you apply private? It's simple. So when I apply private, so we discussed, like as of now, like I can access cache from child class, right? So now see, when you apply cache private, then the scope of that variable will be dice within this class. When you apply private, the scope of the variable dies within the class. You agree with me? Okay. And second thing, these specifiers, you can say int a equal to 10 here, but you cannot say, it's not allowed, like public int a, because it's already the scope of the local variables already defined, right? Scope of the local variables dies within here, but instance variables can be accessed outside the class using the inheritance concept or some other concept, let's say. Then how do you control if you want to control, right? Using the access specifier. So if you define private, now you get the error here. The field parent is not visible. So the as and when you see the private, irrespective of whether you extend it or not, it cannot be accessible outside this parent class. Okay, the moment I remove this private, the error will be gone here, right? Okay, next is can I use so class level, I haven't defined anything here, right? Any access specifier. What does it mean? It is default. Default can be allowed for a class, public also allowed for a class, but if I try to put let's say private, it gives an error. What is the error? Illegal modifier for the class parent, only public, abstract and final are permitted. You cannot use private. Okay, makes sense. Okay, and what happens if I use protected? Same thing, you cannot access, right? So what happens if I say protected? I didn't get an error here. So protected is the certain definition. So those definitions are nothing but, this is one, like same package if the both classes are in the same package, or if the both classes are different package. And if you use private, let's say class A, class B, class C, let's say I'll write a diagram for this in response to that logic so that you can understand easily. So I need more space. Come on. All right. So these are the two different packages. Okay, one package 1, package 2. So don't get confused what is package, right? I'm keep on using. So this is package 1. So here we have how many packages? We have 2 packages, day 5, day 6. This is the difference. This is in one package, the day 6, day 5 is having 3 classes. day 6 is having 3 classes. That is called packages. Okay, so there are 2 packages, and then in package 1 we have class A, class A. So we defined 4 variables. What are those? Public A variable int A, and private int B, public A, default B, protected C, and private D. These are the 4 variables I defined in a class A. Okay, and I have a B class, I have a C class, okay, within the same package. Okay, and what happens when I try to access directly? Okay, so there are 2 ways you can access this data, right? One is by extending this guy into the class, and second one is by creating an object of A inside C and try to access. I think it doesn't make sense. Let's write a program. So packages, let me do it. Sub packages I'll do inside so that you can easily understand. Basics dot pack 1, something name, whatever you name wanted. Sub packages being created. Okay. Oh, they went outside. They went inside. Whatever it is. I am defining a class. Okay. Class. Sorry. Yeah. And then class B, and then class C. Okay, here in package C, class D, class C. Okay, so there are 5 classes. So basically I'm going to define variables here. Okay, what are the variables? Public int x, okay, equal to 10. You don't need to define, default values will be there. We are not talking about variables assignment, right? So, and y, int y, and protected z, int z, and private int p. Okay, so there are 4 variables I defined. So there are any class object you can access outside that class in 2 ways, right? We discussed already in 2 ways. What are those 2 ways? One is by creating an object of that class, by creating object of this class A inside other class, and you can access the variables. And second way is by extending this class into another class, you can access these variables. These are the 2 ways you can access those variables, right, inside the class A. So let's say, as per the diagram, class B creating an object. Okay, inside the class B, what are you trying to do is create an object. Okay, a equal to new a, and see, let's see now a obj. So for better understanding, a object. Now a object, using object, how many, what and all you can access, let's see. What happened? You save this guy, right? Something wrong I did. All the ints has been there, and I'm trying to grab custom. Oh, sorry. So blunders I do all the time. We need to create an object in method. Sorry. B void B. Okay. Here I'll try to create an object A, and now I try to access the variable. So bj dot. So what and all visible? X, Y, Z. There is another one P. P is not visible. X is public, Y is default, Z is protected, and P is private. Private is not showing it up. So the private scope dies within this class no matter what you do. By creating an object you cannot. So you can access X, obj dot X. You can access X, or you can access Y, and you can access Z, right? And if you try to access P, it will give you an error. So the scope, it cannot understand P because the scope is not available here. So by creating an object, you can access only variables which are defined in the class, which are private, which are public, protected, or default. Okay, another way is by extending the class, extends A, and see what and all you can access. Void method SYSOUT can access A, sorry, X. Okay, no error. So even though I haven't defined this X variable, but by extending A, extends A, I can able to access. So public is allowed, Y default is allowed, nice, Z protected also allowed, P gives an error. So private is not allowed. So that is what we are trying to say in this diagram. If it is private, if the variable is in class A, then it cannot be accessed by creating an object in class B. It cannot be accessed by creating extending class A. You cannot, no, right? These two we proved, and remaining all working, right, within the same package. Let's try the same thing here. One is extends A. A doesn't understand because you need to, if the class is in different class, you need to import it, import that class. So how do you import? Import is something like, you remember scanner we imported, same thing, com, bell, batch 6, day 6, pack 1, A class first import. If you try to access any class outside of the same package, then you need to import it in order to use the functionalities of that class. Okay, see, now here you try to access A, you don't need to import because A and B are within the same package. You don't need to explicitly import. It will be able, it can be able to access. But if you are trying to access outside the, if you try to add class outside of that class package, then you need to explicitly import that package. Okay, so now let's see, void method Yes, so let's copy paste, save some time, right? Extending, and in this case private, let's see, private is not working, public is working, public good. So if you extend outside the package, public is good, protected also good, but default is not working, default not working, not accessible. If it is outside the package, try to understand. Okay, if it is within the package, same thing worked for us, system dot void by extending, same thing worked for us here. By extending, y is working for us, you can able to access. But in case of outside the package, the default values are not accessible. Remember that. Okay, and the last one, by creating an object, right? So what do? Void method. Now copy paste it, sorry. Copy paste. Still giving error. Yeah. So now what we're trying to do is create an object, a object, a obj equal to new. So a obj dot sorry. Now you can access a obj dot x can be working. Nice. Obj dot, we can check. Nice, it is working. J dot, nice, it is working. Import class A first. Okay, okay. So by creating an object, you cannot access, that's what it is saying. By creating an object, no, and yes, only public is allowed. So only public is works, remaining protected doesn't work, default doesn't work, protected not good, default not good, and private not good. So you need to comment them out. So that is what it's, I just showed you the for variables, right? Same thing, if you have a method here, like say public method, public void m1, and it has some implementation, right? If somebody, a tries to access, if you keep protected, what happens? Public, what happens? Private, what happens? Same, whatever the behavior it is there for the variable, same thing applied for methods as well. So overall, this is the behavior scope. If a variable is there, if a variables are defined in the class A with different sectors like private, default, protected, public access specifiers, then if you try to access within the same package by creating an object of that class A in class B, then except private, everything can be accessible. And other option is by extending that class A, if you try to see the variables, then private is not accessible, remaining all working fine. But if you go to the different package and try to create an object class A and try to access these variables, except public, nothing is accessible. Okay, and by extending class A into the other package class E, then private and protected, default is not working, protected is working by extending, protected doesn't work outside package by creating an object. These are the definitions that has been there. Like, you may have a question like why it is not allowed. They may have strong reasons and they are defining, like, why we write A in this format, B in this format, right? Why can't we write B in this format? Like what I'm trying to say is, Why we need to write always A like this? Why we need to write B always like this? Because that is how the earlier generation has been started defining certain definitions so that the rest of the world follows. Why do you need to drive, on the right side of the road always, right? So those are the rules that has been defined. Like that in Java also they have these kind of rules. We trying to learn as many rules, as many definitions, as much concepts as we want in the core Java, so that we can go ahead and implement whatever the business logic that the companies want using this language. Okay. Mm, that is good. Mm, what else did we need to 9:15, right? Okay, we did good progress actually. We could have covered constructors, but I'm okay. I'm happy the way it's progressing. Um, yeah, we are good for the day. So there are two things I would like to update you guys. Give me a second. Let's stop the recording.